Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and in today's video we have tier set bonuses for all the classes, all the specs here and more within, at least I think so. And yeah, there's the first day of beta is today. There's a lot of other stuff already being data mined and coming out. I'll probably have another video out soon with that kind of information, including some stuff about heroic dungeons, and maybe if they do patch notes of the class and spec changes, we'll take a look at that as well. But this video is going to focus exclusively on the set bonuses. So let's start off with DK. We have, I guess these are, yeah, blood. Okay. So this is probably blood, 2-piece, 4-piece, and then these are probably the other, yeah, frost. Okay, yeah, just badly separated here. So blood DK 2-piece. While you have one or more bone shield charges, damage you take is reduced by 2%. Losing a bone shield charge has a chance to reduce the damage you take by an additional 1% up to 3% for 6 seconds. While you have one or more bone shield charge... Okay, this is the same text. Yeah, okay. Cool. Well, pretty boring, pretty weak, pretty low impact. It's a 5% DR if you get full uptime on this part, which in raid situations you often aren't losing bone shield charges if you're not actually actively tanking. But hopefully if you are actively tanking, the proc chance on this is high enough that you just maintain... Because 6 seconds is not very long. So my worry is that this is just going to fall off a lot as well, and this is going to be like 2%, 3%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 2%, right? And that's going to be kind of feel bad. So hopefully this is like a very high proc chance such that, it actually, you can hold this thing at a 5% bonus for reasonably good uptime. The 4-piece says your damage is increased by 1% per active bone shield charge. Taking damage while below 6 bone shield charges has a chance to generate 1 to 2 bone shield charges. Interesting. So this first part is a huge incentive to be at full or close to full bone shield charges, right? The difference between... I think there's a talent that lets you go up to 12 maximum. So I don't know if they removed that, but there was, at least in a couple builds ago, there was a talent that did that. So that'd be a 12% damage increase. Pretty big. Now, obviously, as that gets down to like 8 or 7%, that's only an 8 or 7% damage increase. But the question is whether it's going to be rotationally worth it to actually sit at below 6 to get this charge gen. My guess is probably not. My guess is that you're probably just supposed to generate your own charges, bite the bullet, hit the marrow rends and stuff, and float between like 9 and 12 bone shield charges to keep this buff as maximized as possible. We'll see, though. We'll see what ends up being the right way to play this, but... That strikes me as a set bonus that's probably got a little bit of a bad incentive baked in here. Frost, the 2-piece. Your runic power spending abilities deal 8% increased damage. Okay, so it does really look like they're kind of similar to Dragonflight Season 1, trying to create some very simple set bonuses, some set bonuses that are somewhat agnostic to the talents, and particularly the hero talents that you play, which does make sense. Although hopefully they build in a little bit more gameplay to these than they did for the Vault of the Incarnates ones. The 4-piece is consuming runic power has a chance to increase your strength by 10% for 8 seconds. Okay, so, a little bit of a damage amp buff thing, but very, very simple, very low mental load, very low gameplay impact. So for some people that's going to be a good thing, for some people that's going to be a bad thing. I think it's a goal that makes some sense at the start of an expansion. You've got new systems, people are learning, they're learning their hero talents. So it does make some sense to have some simpler set bonuses, but I hope... I like it when they're a little bit more gameplay than this, like something that makes you think maybe a tiny bit if you really want to min-max it. Maybe this does. Maybe in some cases you'll delay casting a spender or something if you've got a couple seconds left on this to try and... maintain it or something. I don't know. The Unholy 2-piece says your minions deal 8% increased damage. And the 4-piece says when you summon a minion, your haste is increased by 2% up to 8% for 8 seconds. Okay, so this should at least be pretty fun because this is going to go in your CDs nicely. Give you a bunch of haste in your CDs. That should at least be a pretty fun little thing to do. Let's take a look at Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter Havoc 2-piece. Blade Dance deals 20% increased damage. And the 4-piece, Chaos Strike deals 20% increased damage and has a 25% chance to reset the cooldown of Blade Dance. All right, again, as far as simple set bonuses go, this one seems like it'll be reasonably fun. Blade Dance resets are cool. You could get some I-beam windows where you go Annihilation, Death Sweep, Annihilation, Death Sweep. That could be kind of fun. Soul Cleave deals 15% increased damage and has a 35% chance to shatter one lesser soul fragment from a target it hits, is the Vengeance 2-piece. So trying to move into Soul Cleave being something we do rather than Spirit Bomb here, and generating a few extra lesser soul fragments. Soul Cleave costs 2 soul fragments. Well, not cost, but it consumes 2 of them optimally to heal you. You actually, casting it on 0 or on empty is a reasonable thing to do that I think new Vengeance Demon Hunters often don't do that as much as they should. But yeah, so assuming it's using the 2 lesser soul fragments, it's now sort of getting like a 17% cost reduction, if you wanted to think about it that way, in terms of like randomly giving you those soul fragments back. And then I guess it can even generate soul fragments if you're hitting it with none out. Interesting. The 4-piece says consuming a soul fragment increases the damage and healing of your next Fel Dev by 2% up to 30%. This is primarily going to be the damage side of this is going to be the relevant part, because it's pretty rare that you need the healing of Fel Devastation. Usually when you press Fel Devastation, you are gigafine, right? Like, it's almost impossible for a Vengeance Demon Hunter to die when pushing Fel Dev or just afterwards. Usually you end up being topped at some point after your Fel Dev because you're in meta, you're very happy. There's much celebration in the kingdom. The people are rejoicing. And then the points in the Vengeance Demon Hunter rotation when you're likely to die are when Fel Dev is nowhere to be seen. It's 20 seconds left on its cooldown. You know, the peasants are crying out in despair. There's famine in the kingdom, right? Those sorts of things happening. So this set bonus is going to offer very little defensive benefit as a result, because it's buffing healing of the point in your rotation. First of all, healing is just a very weak way to buff Vengeance Demon Hunter generally, because it's already got quite a bit of self-healing as part of its thing. So that doesn't add too much value. Even if they put it on a more rotationally relevant spell, it would be better, but it would still be a pretty weak defensive increase to this type of spec. But especially being on Fel Dev, this is mostly just going to be contributing some extra damage. But Fel Dev does do a reasonable amount of damage, so this will be a little damage amp. My guess is this is going to be a pretty weak set of tank bonuses, though. But it's worth noting, and this holds for this entire video, some specs I know a decent amount about, like Vengeance. Some specs I know less about. Even the specs I know a decent amount about, I often can be way off base on my initial impression of these set bonuses. So do not take what I say as gospel. If, my take disagrees with what the theory crafters of a class or spec who have looked at it for like an hour and really thought it through say, probably believe them, not me. At some point in the future, I may double down or back off of any of these takes after having thought about it more, after having played with it, at which point you may still want to disregard whatever I say, but at that point you can take it with more seriousness. But as of right now, this is just a first impression type thing. But yeah, my first impression is this is pretty weak. Okay, Druid. We got a lot of Druid set bonuses because there are a lot of Druid specs. So that makes sense. The balance 2-piece says Star Surge damage increased by 8%, Star Fall damage increased by 10%. Okay, all right, we got a decent little AoE set bonus coming in here. The 4-piece says Lunar Eclipse and Solar Eclipse each increase the astral power Wrath generates by 1 and Starfire generates by 2. Okay, so a little bit more AP in the rotation. A little bit. I wonder if this will be noticeable. I think the main power here is 8% Star Surge, 10% Starfall. Particularly in AoE, right? Starfall is a bigger percentage, I think, of your AoE damage than Star Surge is of your single target damage. I could be wrong about that, especially with the new, reworks and changes in War Within. But yeah, cool. Feral, 2-piece. Tiger's Fury increases your crit chance, starting at 6% and increasing by 1% every 10 seconds for 10 seconds, it looks like. So Tiger's Fury, when you press it, you're going to get 6% crit. 10 seconds later, you're going to have 11% crit. And then I guess it's going to go away. Unless the increase also refreshes the duration, in which case it would be 6%, 7%, 8%, 9%, 10%, 11%, and that would hold for 10 seconds, which would be very strong. My guess is that it probably is more the it goes up and then it immediately goes away as soon as it hits 11%. 4-piece says crits with your combo point generating abilities increase the direct damage of your next Ferocious Bite and Rampant Ferocity or Primal Wrath by 15% stacking up to 3 times. Okay. So set bonus with some synergy to crit, right? The 4-piece is something that's going to increase the value of crit on your gear, and the 2-piece is going to give you some crits even regardless of that. But it seems reasonably good. Yeah. Also seems reasonably interactive, reasonably good amount of gameplay for a set bonus, for, compared to some of these other ones that are like, your builder deals 15% more damage, your spender deals 8% more damage, or whatever, like we've seen. So I think the feral one looks pretty cool, but not a feral scientist, so let me know what you think. Guardian 2-piece. Thrash and Moonfire increase your damage done and reduce the damage you take by 1% for 8 seconds, stacking 3 times. Okay, so 3% damage done, 3% damage reduction. Very simple set. Pretty powerful as well. Like, obviously 3% is a pretty small number, but this is going to be full uptime. This effect is going to be full uptime, and it's both 3% damage done and 3% reduced damage taken for the 2-piece, so pretty good about that. 4-piece. Arcane damage you deal is increased by 5%, and bleed damage you deal is increased by 5%. Cool. Arcane damage can be quite a lot of your build, particularly if you're playing the Lunar Adept or something hero talent tree. Bleed damage, that's Thrash, which is also a reasonable amount of your damage in AoE. My guess is that this combination of 2-piece and 4-piece is going to slightly bias you away from Druid of the Claw and towards the Lunar hero talent tree, but that is just a guess. And yeah, it seems like it's a reasonably okay. I mean, 3% damage reduction, and then maybe 6% damage done increase or something, depending on how much of your damage is Arcane and Bleed. Pretty boring, very simple, very vanilla, no gameplay rotation impact really, unless you need to do unless you were going to let this fall off, in which case, obviously, don't. But yeah, a very simple set bonus, very simplistic one. Resto Druid 2-piece. Regrowth, Wild Growth, and Swift Mend healing increased by 10%. 4-piece. Your healing is increased by 8% when consuming Soul of the Forest bonus and for 6 seconds afterwards. I like this as well. This is, again, as far as the simple set bonuses go, this one is a little bit of gameplay, a little bit, introduces a little bit of thinking that you can min-max around. It's not going to punish you if you don't, which I think is very important as well. It's not going to punish you very hard at all. If you just kind of play and forget about this, that's going to be fine. But if you want, you can maybe game this a little bit and, playing around it for a little bit of reward, and that is nice. Okay, Evoker. The Augmentation 2-piece. Upheaval increases or deals 30% increased damage and increases the damage of your next 2 eruption casts by 30%. The 4-piece, Ebonmite increases primary stat by an additional 0.4% of your own every 2 seconds it remains active, up to 2%. Wow. So this 2-piece is very whatever. Who cares about the damage of your upheavals and eruptions? That's extremely whatever. Those, obviously they do a little bit of damage, but who cares? That's not what you're about as Nog. Ebonmite effectively giving an extra 2%. So Ebonmite uptime is going to be hurt by the loss of haste going into the loss of haste and mastery going into the new, and crit, I guess, as well, going into the new season. But still, seems like you should have pretty good uptime on it regardless. And pretty quick, this is going to ramp up to a 2% more, by an additional 2% of your own. Like, I think Ebonmite is default around, 8 or 10% or something. So this is a nice, 20% more Ebonmite value, something like that. I could be making up those numbers entirely, but this 4-piece seems quite strong. This 4-piece seems very good for Og Evoker. Devastation 2-piece. Disintegrate damage increased by 10% and Pyre damage increased by 10%. Okay, so your spenders do more damage. 4-piece. Eternity Surge's cooldown is decreased by 5 seconds, and it now grants Essence Burst. Cool, so that'll be nice. That'll make the rotation a little smoother, a little bit more stuff going on in it. Again, this one's not going to really change gameplay decisions too much, but it is going to give you nice little bits of gameplay. I wonder if this will happen on the procced Eternity Surges during Disintegrate. That would potentially be very powerful. It's also worth noting that in the past, this might make you think like, oh, maybe I can get to a third Eternity Surge for an extra Dragon Rage extension. But it is worth noting that dev is getting changed in War Within such that you can only get 2 Dragon Rage extensions out of each Empower spell, so that's not going to be something that can happen anyways. Preservation, 2-piece. Reversion and Emerald Blossom heal an injured ally within 30 yards for 10% of any amount healed. So a little bit of free smart healing. Emerald Blossom in particular, can do quite a lot of healing per cast, right? So funneling a bunch of that healing onto a injured ally, potentially pretty strong. The 4-piece says Verdant Embrace increases the healing of your next reversion by 200%. Okay, cool. I love this. This is, again, I'm not a preservation scientist, so I don't know if they're going to love this, but this seems like a pretty cool little thing. It's going to give you a nice little kind of 1-2 punch for some healing if you want, and there's synergy between the 4-piece and the 2-piece as well. This is the kind of set bonus that I like here. I like this a lot more than the really basic ones. This one seems like it's, you could put this set bonus on, not know about it, do your rotation right, and you're going to get value out of it. But also, if you do know about it, you can game it a little bit, you can play it around with it a little bit, and you can, use it and get some good value out of it too. So that, I think, is the sweet spot they should be aiming for with these set bonuses. And I think most of them are missing right now on the under-exciting side. And this one seems to be quite at quite a good level. But again, Prez is one of the specs that I play very little of currently. I plan to actually play it soon so that I can pick it up a little bit and have more useful stuff to say about it. But as of right now, this is, just an impression. All right, let's take a look at Hunter. Hunter, Beast Mastery 2-piece. Barbed Shot further increases your pet's attack speed by 5%. 4-piece, your pets have a chance. Your pet's attacks have a 10% chance to increase all pet damage you deal by 10% for 10 seconds. All right, so very, equip these items, forget that you have them on, accidentally have only 3-piece on instead of 4-piece, don't realize it because you don't notice, kill Firac anyways. That happened to, I believe, a Hunter out there last season, back in Dragonflight Season 3. And definitely is at risk of happening with this set bonus as well. This is something that you will not notice at all. Marksmanship 2-piece. Arcane Shot and Multi-Shot damage increased by 20%. It's actually, just going back to this Beastmaster one real quick, I guess this does have some synergy with, I think some of the pack leader talents key off of pet attacks, maybe? Or maybe they just empower your next pet attacks. So maybe they don't increase as your pet's attack speed increases. So I don't know. I need to look at that tree again. Anyways, Marksmanship. Arcane Shot and Multi-Shot damage increased by 20%. 4-piece, Consuming Precise Shots increases the damage of your next aimed shot by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. Okay, again, so pretty simple set bonus. This one at least maybe will be a little bit of fun in it. I guess probably not really. I'm not a marksmanship scientist either, but my guess is this doesn't change anything about how you would play, really. Survival, 2-piece. Wildfire Bomb damage increased by 5%. 4-piece, Mongoose Bite and Raptor Strike deal increased damage to targets affected by Wildfire Bomb. So 2-piece is actually an AoE increase. That's nice. 4-piece is a single target or a funnel damage increase only. But it's nice, the specs that are going to be getting some amount of AoE, right? Like Wildfire Bomb being increased, Starfall being increased. I guess this 2-piece is also an AoE increase because Beast Cleave. Though it's nice, to be one of the specs that is getting some AoE in your 2-piece. And then it looks like the 4-piece for serve, a little bit more single target focused. But, maybe a reasonable single target increase in those cases, right? I think Mongoose Bite, particularly when you're talenting that, can be a large percent of your damage. I don't know if they currently do with the War Within version of the talent tree, which I guess is pretty similar to the live version of the talent tree. So, anyways, let's take a look at the Mage set bonus. Arcane Blast and Arcane Explosion damage increased by 6%. Arcane Blast is a lot of your damage. Arcane Explosion, not usually a lot of your damage, even in AoE, but Arcane Blast is a lot of your damage on single target. 4-piece, Consuming Arcane Blast casting Arcane Blast or Arcane Explosion has a 10% chance to make your next barrage deal 10% increased damage and generate 4 charges. Sweet. This one is actually one of the set bonuses that you will need to track Like, you're going to be missing out if you don't track this because, you know, in single target, you need to know when this happens because otherwise you're generally not supposed to press Arcane Barrage in a lot of cases. You know, there are lots of spots in the rotation where you're supposed to go many globals without casting an Arcane Barrage. And if you proc this, that is no longer true. This is going to be really fun in AoE because in AoE, you know, you get Arcane Explosion, like the Arcane Explosion, Arcane Barrage, or Barrage thing. This kind of goes even further into that, and it is going to be, you know, basically like a barrage. You could even, if you're far enough away, you could get a barrage that procs an orb. You could get like 3 barrages if you're far enough away out of one. I guess that's going to be hard with Arcane Explosion needing you to be in melee range, but still, you get 2 barrages out of one Arcane Explosion cast if you then get an orb off of the barrage. That'd be fun. But the single target side of things, you definitely need to make sure that you're tracking this, and you know, there will be... this is quite rotation changing as it procs. So I like this in theory. I like this a lot. It's a little bit weird to me that they've given this to Arcane, a spec that they've been trying to tone down the rotational complexity of with the changes they've been making in the beta cycle. So this seems like one of the specs that... Like, if you asked me to guess which specs they gave particularly simple set bonuses to, I would have been like, probably Arcane. But it looks like they're giving Arcane a particularly complicated set bonus for this season. Now, I think this one looks really fun. I hope it survives the cycle, and I hope it is fun. I hope I'm right that it's fun. But, yeah, it's just a little weird thing. Fire 2-piece. Phoenix Flame's damage increased by 10%. This amount is increased to 25% on its primary target. Okay. The 4-piece says, after dealing damage, Phoenix Flames has a 10% chance to return to you, refunding 1% of the cooldown on Phoenix Flames, and granting you 6% increased spell damage for 10 seconds. Huh. 1% of the cooldown. So, it's a 10% chance to refund 1% of the cooldown, which means that it on average, each Phoenix Flames refunds 0.1% of its cooldown. So you need to cast 1,000 Phoenix Flames, or I guess you need to get 1,000 to return to you, because in AoE, you know, you'll get multiple of these. So potentially each target in AoE that it hits could have one of these returned to you. But you'd need to have 1,000 instances of Phoenix Flames damage to get one additional cast of Phoenix Flames out of this. So this part of the set bonus, at least, is very, very, very weak. The 1% cooldown refund. Even if this was buffed to 10%, it's probably pretty hard to notice. But at 1%, it's like, what is happening here? So almost all the value of this 4-piece, therefore, must lie in the 6% increased spell damage for 10 seconds, which, again, is 10% of the time that Phoenix Flames does damage. So on single target, I think that's just going to be straight up 10% of your Phoenix Flames are going to give you 6% increased damage for 10 seconds. At least in AoE, maybe you will get a decently high uptime on this, but on single target, we're probably talking about, what, like 10 seconds every 2 minutes of this buff? So we're probably talking about a 0.5% increased spell damage, roughly, value thing. Yeah, this 4-piece seems beans. This just seems horrifying. Maybe this is one of those set bonuses where some of these percentages are just wrong in the spell data or haven't been tuned yet, but as of right now, this set bonus is a candidate for me as most what is happening here set bonus of all time. All right, Mage Frost, 2-piece. Ice Lance damage increased by 5%, and Fingers of Frost increases the damage of your next Frozen Orb by 10%, stacking up to 10 times. Cool. Putting a bunch of juice into your next orb. Probably more of a single target thing where you cast fewer orbs. So, well, I guess you're going to get good value out of this in AoE as well. But this seems like a set bonus that's mostly going to enhance your single target because Ice Lances are something that hopefully you're doing more often in single target. Obviously, you cast them in AoE as well as needed, but you know, AoE, you have a lot more globals going into Frozen Orb, going into Blizzard, that kind of stuff. Single target, you have more... If you're casting Ice Lances in single target, you're happy. If you're casting Ice Lances in AoE, you're sad, right? And then Fingers of Frost consumption, ramping up the damage of your next Frozen Orb. That's obviously nice in AoE because Frozen Orb is so much damage. But also in single target, you're actually going to be able to stack this up to 10 times. So I guess that side's kind of washes out. Yeah, this seems like a pretty cool set bonus. 4-piece. Frozen Orb increases Ice Lance's damage by 15% for 15 seconds. Okay. So, again, this has some merit in both AoE and single target. You're going to have higher uptime on this in AoE because you're casting more Frozen Orbs. In AoE, depending on what build Frost Mages play, I guess, and depending maybe on the hero talents too. But yeah, this seems quite good. This seems like it'll be quite good in single target and in AoE. And it seems like it's going to reward good gameplay. It seems like it's going to synergize well with your opener, with your cooldowns. I like these set bonuses. Again, you don't need... This is one of the set bonuses you don't need to track at all. You don't need to think about it all, really. But it does still reward good gameplay. It still synergizes with the kit well. This is one of the ones that I think is definitely not too complicated or too simplistic. It's like in that kind of Goldilocks zone for what they're going for this season, it looks like. So the mage sets have been interesting. We've got, I think, a banger, a stinker, and another pretty good one that is maybe less of a banger by my definition, but has a lot lower downsides in terms of confusing people or punishing bad gameplay, requiring additional weak ores to track and stuff than the Arcane set bonus does. Interesting. All right, Monk, Brewmaster. Blackout Kick and Keg Smash deal 20% increased damage, and Shuffle also grants 3% damage reduction. Okay, so again, we've got most tank set bonuses are granting somewhere in that 3 to 5% damage reduction value, with the ones that are granting less damage reduction also granting more damage, it looks like. This one, though, Blackout Kick and Keg Smash, that's a lot of your damage. 20% additional damage is a lot. I think Brewmaster has gotten a pretty good set bonus here on the 2-piece. The 4-piece says Blackout Kick increases your damage dealt by 1% for 15 seconds, stack up to 3 times, and has a chance to reset the cooldown of Keg Smash and make its next cast cost no energy. Cool. Another little damage buff. You're going to get some Keg Smash resets, though, and they're going to cost no energy. It's a low bar to clear, but at least you're going to feel this one in the rotation a little bit, and it should feel pretty good. Yeah. I don't know. Very basic set bonus, but especially the tank ones have looked especially simple. This one, compared to some of the other tank ones, though, I think is pretty good. Pretty good. It gets a solid C+ from me, which is doing better than most of the tank set bonuses. Mistweaver, 2-piece. Enveloping Mist and Renewing Mist healing increased by 10%. Okay. 4-piece. Vivify extends the duration of Renewing Mist and Enveloping Mist on its primary target by 2 seconds up to 4 seconds. Cool. Little benefit, a little bit of gameplay, nothing major. Sort of a tank healing, single target healing focused one, but you'll get some value in raid healing situations as well, maybe with this. Probably not. You probably won't think about this too much in raid healing situations, but in the situation where you're kind of dumping single target healings into somebody, this will be a nice benefit to that. There's a lot of extra HPS from keeping an Enveloping Mist on them. Windwalker, 2-piece. Tiger Palm increases the damage of your next melee ability by 5%. Okay. So you're going to want a Tiger Palm before your big damage melee abilities, I guess. 4-piece. Your other melee abilities increase the damage of your next Tiger Palm by 25%, stacking up to 6 times. 15% of Tiger Palm's damage is dealt onto nearby enemies, reduced beyond 5 targets. Huh. Okay. So Tiger Palm is now getting basically some of that Fist of Fury treatment, where it does some AoE. And then your other melee abilities increase the damage of your next Tiger Palm. So this is weird, because the 2-piece makes you want to press Tiger Palm before your other melee abilities to get 5% more damage on them. But then your 4-piece doesn't want you to press a lot of Tiger Palms, right? Because you only want to press Tiger Palm every 6 abilities, or after 6 other abilities, so that you're getting more globals will be contributing into this set bonus. I guess the base damage of Tiger Palm is quite low, so 25% more on it maybe isn't enough to super change your playstyle. Huh. This is a weird set bonus. This is hard for me to evaluate. I would need to look more at the base damage numbers of Tiger Palm versus Rising Sun Kick versus Fist of Fury and stuff. But this seems very weird to me. Maybe fun, though. I don't know. Windwalker, at least overall, they've made a bunch of good changes to it going into War Within. A lot of the changes they've made to Windwalker have really, made it clear that they kind of understand the spec in a way that a lot of previous expansion changes made one doubt. This set bonus does strike me as the kind of typical Windwalker set bonus where the Windwalkers aren't going to be happy with it, but I don't know for sure. Maybe, I don't know. I could see this, I guess, adding some good gameplay maybe. A lot of it is going to depend on the incentives created by this, and I can't get a good handle on that without having looking at like all the base damages of all the abilities and stuff. All right, let's take a look at the Paladin ones. Holy 2-piece. Holy Shock's healing is increased by 10%, and its cooldown is reduced by 10%. Okay, nice. All the value from the 2-piece being put into Holy Shock, but this seems like a fun way to do it, right? Cooldown reduction, fun. Healing increase, fun. Small numbers, lines up with every other set bonus this season. 4-piece. Holy Shock increases the initial healing of your next Word of Glory or Light of Dawn by 8%, stack them to 4 times. Okay, also nice. You know, you're going to get this sort of cast a lot of Holy Shocks, build up stacks, make a big Light of Dawn, make a big Word of Glory. That seems fun. This seems nice. I like this one. Yeah. Prop Pally, 2-piece. Shield of the Righteous deals 10% increased damage and grants, there it is, that 3% damage reduction that we've been seeing across the tanks. And Shield of the Righteous, you know, does a lot of damage, does a lot of AoE damage. Cool. Nice damage increase on the 2-piece as well. 4-piece. Casting a Holy Power ability increases the damage and healing you deal during your next wings by 0.5%. This effect stacks, and it doesn't say it stacks to a certain amount. So you could potentially juice up your next wings to like a 10% more damage and healing increase. All right, this seems fun. This seems like a fun little thing to play around with. Yeah. Again, wings, increasing the healing you do during wings. I guess if you're trying to like no heal a key, that could be relevant. But for the most part, you're just going to be playing this for the damage increase, and that is fun. That looks like a fun way to play. I like this. Ret Pally 2-piece. Blade of Justice damage increased by 15%. Wake of Ashes damage increased by 10%. 4-piece. Wake of Ashes increases your damage done by 10% for 8 seconds. Okay. This maybe is enough to change around the order that you cast things to line up this buff with other stuff. I don't know. I don't really know what the Ret Pally rotation is looking like in War Within. But for the most part, my guess is that if it doesn't do that, this is one of those set bonuses that you can equip and forget about. For Ret in particular, I think that's probably fine. They have some gameplay changes already coming with their class tree, with their spec tree, rather. They have some pretty gameplay intensive hero talents with either Herald of the Sun or Templar being things that you'll, think about. Stuff will happen that you want to be using your brain power on. So Ret Pally, I think, is one of the ones that I'm more okay with getting a set bonus that you don't get any gameplay out of, because I think they're getting enough new gameplay from the spec tree and from the hero talent trees. Priest. Disc Priest, 2-piece. Atonement healing is increased by 5%. 4-piece. Smite and Penance increase the damage of your next Mind Blast by 25%, or the absorb amount of your next Power Word Shield by 15%, stack up to 3 times. My guess is that you're going to want to probably make sure that this lands on the Mind Blast side of things, rather than the Power Word Shield, although maybe in a pinch you can use this on the Power Word Shield for value, especially maybe you combine this with Rapture, and you get a really big shield on somebody for some reason that they need it. That sounds a little suspicious, but maybe it's something you could do. Yeah, probably you're just using this to, smite, Mind Blast, smite, or smite, Penance, Mind Blast, something like that, right? Like to make sure that you're getting good value out of this, 75% more on your Mind Blast. Yeah. This seems like a fun set bonus. Again, not particularly complicated, but there is some gameplay here. I like it. Holy Paladin 2-piece, or Holy Priest rather, 2-piece. Serendipity is 10% more effective. 4-piece. Heal, Flash Heal, Prayer of Healing have a 50% chance to cast again at 35% effectiveness. So you could read this set bonus as Heal, Flash Heal, Prayer of Healing, deal, 17.5% more healing, right? But it's like proc chance. I wonder if there's any important interactions with casting again. I guess there probably is. This probably synergizes with the Holy Words, right? Like if this happens, you're probably getting another hit of CDR on your Holy Words. Okay. That sounds fun. That seems like it'll be a nice little bit of gameplay interaction. There could be some other interactions I'm not thinking of as well with that. So cool. Again, this one probably doesn't change your priorities too much, but it might be something you can actually feel in the rotation, which is a low bar to clear, but it's not a bar that a lot of these set bonuses are currently clearing. So the ones that do, we are happy with. Shadow Priest 2-piece. The duration of Devouring Plague is increased by 1 second. Okay, particularly start of expansion, this is going to be nice quality of life because at the start of the expansion, you are having the most trouble with Devouring Plague uptime, right? The most times where it incidentally falls off. 4-piece, Devouring Plague increases your damage done by 2% for 10 seconds. Multiple applications may overlap. All right, so again, we've got a little bit of a gameplay one here where the 2-piece is giving you a little bit more, slack to let Devouring Plague, or to build up some insanity and not just need to spend it on Devouring Plagues to maintain Devouring Plague uptime to keep your mastery working. So that's nice. And then the 4-piece is giving you a incentive here, right? It's saying like, hey, if you can bank some insanity, and then you can cast 4 Devouring Plagues within 10 seconds, and then cast your Void Torrent, like you're going to get a little bit of a damage increase out of it. It's a small damage increase, but it's maybe enough that you're going to feel cool for doing that. Probably not. You can probably forget about this set bonus and just play like regular, and you'll be totally fine because the multiple applications may overlap. You're never losing that much value, but maybe there's a little bit here where it's like, you could do a little bit of min-max, and I like that idea. So, these set bonuses, this is a nice quality of life on the 2-piece, and then the 4-piece is mostly forgettable and maybe slightly min-maxable. Perfect place for these set bonuses to be, I think. Rogue, Assassination. When your bleeds deal damage, they have a chance to grant you Vile Tincture for 8 seconds, increasing your poison damage by 1% per stack, up to 10 stacks. Interesting. I hope that this self-maintains. Like, I hope this is the kind of thing where they set it up like this just so that it takes a little bit of time to ramp, rather than if there's a decent chance that you have bleeds on a target for 8 seconds and your Vile Tincture falls off, that's bad. But yeah, this would potentially be 10% increased poison damage, for the whole fight after the first 30 seconds or whatever while you're ramping up your Vile Tinctures. Seems fine. 4-piece, while you have 5 or more stacks of Vile Tincture, Garrote, Rupture, and Crimson Tempest deal 10% additional damage. Okay, so again, if Vile Tincture is ever falling off, we got a big problem. This is going to suck. But this is just a basic, simple stacking bonus that just gives you some passive damage, but also isn't active on pull, so your opener kind of sucks. I don't know. I'm kind of talking myself out of this set bonus. I'm kind of talking myself out of there being any redeeming qualities to this set bonus. This seems really a nice combination of bad quality of life and also no gameplay, nothing that you're going to feel. Yeah, I'm pretty low on this one. Okay, Outlaw, 2-piece. Your Sinister Strike, Pistol Shot, and Ambush have a 20% chance to Ethereal Rampage, dealing 15% increased damage as Shadow. Okay, so this reads as a cool thing, but the 2-piece on its own here is just saying you deal these abilities deal 3% increased damage, right? 20% times 15% is 3%, right? So that's not a lot. Let's see if there's a cool interaction with Ethereal Rampages in 4-piece. Ethereal Rampage additionally increases the damage of your next between the eyes by 6%, stacking up to 3 times. Okay, so depending on how often you're between the eyesing, you may have 18% increased between the eyes damage. But realistically, if you're doing it often, in order to expect 3 Ethereal Rampages, you need to cast 15 Sinister Strike, Pistol Shots, and Ambushes. What is the ratio of Sinister Strike, Pistol Shot, Ambush to Between the Eyes right now? My guess is that it is quite a bit more than 15. Like, you will cast quite a bit fewer of those than 15 for every one Between the Eyes that you cast. Maybe that changes with whatever Outlaw builds get played at the start of the expansion, but my guess is that this is you're going to have 0 to 1, maybe 1 on average of these stacks, which means that these set bonuses combine to say your Sinister Strike, Pistol Shot, and Ambush deal 3% increased damage, and your Between the Eyes deals 6% increased damage. And when you think about it that way, that seems like pretty low numbers on a set bonus. Now, numbers on the set bonus are one of the easiest things and the most likely things for them to change rather than functionality. But the functionality here also isn't much, because it doesn't seem likely that this is going to change your rotation much, right? Nothing you do controls whether you get Ethereal Rampages or not, and Ethereal Rampages, it's not like you're going to be delaying Between the Eyes for Ethereal Rampages ever. or changing, like, oh, now that I have some Ethereal Rampage stacks, let me cast my Between the Eyes. Like, I doubt that's ever happening with any Outlaw builds as far as I know. So my guess is that this is a set bonus that doesn't offer much in terms of gameplay, and right now it looks like it doesn't offer much in terms of damage either. Subtlety Rogue, 2-piece. Symbols of Death increases the damage of your next Secret Technique by 20%. Okay, Secret Technique does a lot of damage. Symbols, is when you're in your cooldowns. So it's going to make your Secret Technique that's already doing a lot of damage because it's the one in your cooldowns do even more damage. That's actually a lot. Like, this is only increasing the damage of one global every 30 seconds or something like that by 20%, but it's a big global. This actually seems like a pretty fun one. 4-piece. Secret Technique increases the damage of your other finishing moves by 16% for 7 seconds. Okay, so yeah, really setting up a damage window, big blast damage. The AoE for this could be really strong, right, with Secret Technique into spamming black powders, doing some big damage. This set bonus seems pretty fun. Seems very subtlety themed. Subtlety has always been, not always, but has usually, whenever subtlety's been fun, it's been a lot of damage loaded into these Symbols of Death windows, and these set bonuses really interact with that in a nice way. And the set bonuses, you're going to get the full value out of them. As long as you press your Symbols of Death, you're going to get this buff onto your next Secret Technique. Doesn't even say it has an expiration time. Maybe it does. And then as long as you press your Secret Techniques, you're going to get damage value on your other finishing moves. Hard to screw up, but easy to really min-max this and, put it into, make your cooldowns do a lot of damage. I like this one. Okay, Shaman. Elemental 2-piece. Elemental Blast or Earth Shock damage is increased by 25%. Earthquake damage is increased by 25%. Okay, so your spenders deal 25% increased damage. 25% is a large number for this kind of effect. It seems like they really want to make sure that Elemental Shaman spenders become a little bit more of the star of the show than they currently are, because right now on live, your spenders are less of what it's about than your Lava Bursts, which is one of your builders. Now, part of that is the current set bonus, but it looks like they definitely want to make a set bonus that goes in the other direction than that. The 4-piece says Spending Maelstrom grants you 5% increased crit chance and 10% increased crit damage. Okay, it doesn't say for how long this lasts, but as long as this lasts for a reasonable amount of time and you can get some good uptime out of this, this looks like it'll be a reasonably fun set bonus. Yeah, I mean, the 2-piece obviously doesn't change your gameplay much at all. Maybe it changes your priority, but it's not doing anything outside of that raw damage modification. The 4-piece is, though. The 4-piece is saying, like, hey, let's try and space out our spenders so that we can maintain this pretty powerful buff, right? 5% increased crit chance is, at the start of an expansion, pretty close to 5% increased damage. Actually, it's a little bit better for Ellie as well because they have Elemental Fury. And then 10% increased crit damage is actually quite a bit worse than that, especially for Ellie because they already have Ellie Fury. But you have guaranteed crits on your Lava Bursts, so that actually brings it back up in value a little bit here, although that reduces the value of this part, so, pretty cool. I don't know. This set bonus, again, as far as Giga simplistic ones go, this is one of the better ones, I think. Still probably a little bit too, like, I'm a much bigger fan of the ones like the Arcane one that we've seen so far, but it seems like they're mostly landing on the much more simple side, and I definitely prefer this to the Assassination Rogue ones, for instance. Enhancement 2-piece. Storm Strike, Lava Lash, Ice Strike, and Crash Lightning deal 15% increased damage, and the 4-piece Feral Spirits last 100% longer. Okay. Again, giga simple bonuses. Almost impossible to screw these ones up, but longer cooldowns is fun. They have found a fun thing to put here, which very low bar to clear, but it has been cleared by the set bonus. So again, this one, if I was sorting these into a pile of like really exciting, pretty exciting, good, and please see me after class, this one at least makes it into that good, maybe the higher end of good tier in terms of like, okay, there's going to be some fun here. Whereas stuff like the Assassination one is going into the see me after class bucket. Okay, Resto Shaman 2-piece. Tidal Waves increases healing of affected spells by 10%, and the 4-piece Tidal Waves is 80% more effective and reduces the mana cost of affected spells by 8%. The mana reduction there is probably pretty small, especially if you're spending this on healing waves. I guess maybe if you're spending it on surges, it's going to be potentially a little bit more value. Potentially also a set bonus that interacts better with Farseer than with Totemic. Well, maybe not, but yeah. A pretty low impact set bonus again, but it's, making tidal waves feel more impactful, at least is something. Because tidal waves is, sometimes something you kind of forget about, but here it's definitely going to want you to... it's not introducing a new rotational incentive, but it's at least enhancing an existing rotational incentive. So once again, I put this into the... I forget where I had all these buckets, but I put it into the good, good enough tier. Warlock. Affliction 2-piece. Malefic Rapture damage is increased by 5%, and crit chance is increased by 10%. Okay. Malefic Rapture is a big part of your kit already. It's a much bigger part of your kit in War Within, and they're leading into it with the set bonus, but I'm actually not as much of a doomer about this as I used to be. I think this actually is looking pretty fun with all the Rapture talents they've added and removing stuff like Siphon Life that really, I think, played pretty nastily with Malefic Rapture. The 4-piece says Rapture has a chance to increase the damage dealt by your dots, most of them, by 15% for 8 seconds. All right, so a little bit of, depending on what this chance is, this maybe is going to add a little bit of gameplay to, those spots in your rotation where not much is going on, maybe not casting Rapture while this is already up so that you don't eat some of your existing duration. But for the most part, you probably just forget about this, and it's just a passive increase. And then this is also just a passive increase. Loads more value into Malefic Rapture, which is already bearing a lot of the load in the Affliction rotation. But, that's the downside. That's the pessimistic way of looking at it. The optimistic way of looking at it is that Malefic Rapture is going to be an even more impactful button to press, that when you press it, you're going to feel even cooler, and you're going to see, you're going to press Malefic Rapture a couple times, and you're going to see yourself jump from 8th to 6th on the damage meters, and you're going to be like, yeah, let's do it. Demo Lock, 2-piece. Your primary demon deals 5% increased damage, and your Shadow Bolt damage is increased by 50%. All the Demo Locks I know, they love it whenever you put power into Shadow Bolt. Whenever I'm talking to people and they're like, I want to play Demo Lock, like, I love the class fantasy of Shadow Bolt. That's the most demonological thing I can think of. So this is going to be something that those Demo Locks they're going to be really happy with. Shadow Bolt doing 50% more damage, they're going to be pogging out. They might not even summon any demons. They might just be full on casting Shadow Bolts. That's their favorite thing in the world. And those, I think, are the Demo Locks that talk to Blizzard about what they should do with the tree and with the spec. The 4-piece. Oh, Shadow Bolt. Oh, there we are again. Wow. These Shadow Bolt Demo Locks are eating good today. Shadow Bolt has a chance to enrage your primary Felguard, increasing the damage of their next Legion strike by 300%. Yeah, so again, pressing Shadow Bolt feeling good. That's what those Demo Locks love. They just love Shadow Bolt and I went over to a Demo Lock friend's house the other day, and he's just got Shadow Bolt, posters up on the wall, a little plushy Shadow Bolt icon thing. It was very cool. So Demo Locks, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're just absolutely in love with these set bonuses here. Destro Lock, 2-piece. Incinerate crit chance increased by 20%. Conflagrate crit chance increased by 25%. Okay. 4-piece, when Conflagrate crits, your fire damage is increased by 5% per 6 seconds. Okay, so set bonuses you can almost entirely forget about here. A little bit of built-in crit synergy here, but not something probably that's enough to do much. Maybe slightly changes your stat values, but other than that, this is pretty forgettable set bonus. Yeah, definitely one of the ones I would hope to have a little bit more gameplay in it. Okay, let's move on to the warrior ones, the final class here. The arms 2-piece. Mortal Strike and Cleave increase the damage of your next Overpower by 10%. 4-piece. When Overpower has its cooldown reset by Tactician, your next Mortal Strike or Cleave has its damage and crit increased by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. Okay. So, yeah, I guess this looks like a reasonably fun little bonus. It gives you a little bit of kind of a incentive to weave these abilities around. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing major, but compared to some of these Warlock ones, right? Arms Warriors can't be too sad about this combo, I don't think. Fury 2-piece. Bloodthirst increases the damage of your next Rampage by 10%. 4-piece, when Raging Blow resets its own cooldown, the damage of your next Bloodthirst is increased by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. Okay, so this is also a nice little bit of gameplay. Again, you could play Existing Fury, get some good value out of these, no questions asked, and that's fine. But you also now do get a little bit of gameplay where it's like, hey, make sure you've pressed 1 Bloodthirst before every rampage. Okay, that's not too hard to do, but that is like an extra little thing to add to the rotation to make sure you're min-maxing this. You'll do it by accident almost always, but if you do it on purpose, you'll do it always. And then the 4-piece, also gives you a little bit of like, oh, you're spamming Raging Blow, it keeps resetting itself. Maybe we just weave in one of these Bloodthirsts, but it's not like this is adding things that are pulling you in a lot of different directions. It is a little bit, but you already want to make sure that you're casting 1 Bloodthirst and not just full spamming Raging Blow, because you already want to be pressing a Bloodthirst for your 2 set. So this kind of helps you, gives you more incentive to do the right thing already. Yeah, cool. I like this a lot. I think the set bonus, again, it's a pretty simple one. It's a pretty basic one. It's not punishing, which I think is a very good priority for them to have for these set bonuses. But it's also at least somewhat, there's something there. That's nice. Prot Warrior 2-piece. When your Shield Slam cooldown is reset by Strategist, you gain Expert Strategist, increasing the damage of Shield Slam and reducing all damage taken by 3% for 6 seconds. Okay, Shield Slam, a lot of your single target damage, not a lot of your AoE damage, but a lot of your single target damage, and you're getting damage reduction. The standard 3% damage reduction they've been stapling onto all of the tank set bonuses, it looks like. The 4-piece says Shield Slam crits increase the damage dealt by Thunderclap and Revenge by 10% for 8 seconds. So this one is giving you a little bit more incentive to make sure you're pressing your Shield Slams in AoE, which sometimes in AoE, Shield Slam is a button that doesn't actually feel great to press because it is, a single target button, but you do still want to press it often because it's generating good rage. And because your globals aren't, it's not like you always have great AoE options to spend on anyways, and Shield Slam generating rage will let you do more AoE damage with more revenges anyways. Okay, yeah, I mean, the 4-piece mostly damage oriented. It looks like most of the tank 4-pieces are mostly damage oriented though as well. Sometimes some of them are paying a little bit of lip service to increasing your healing, but I don't think it's a big deal that the Prot Warrior one here doesn't. It's got the standard 3% DR on the 2-piece, and then the 4-piece, a little bit more damage, a little bit of crit synergy as well, which maybe started expansion. This is going to proc pretty rarely because you're just not going to have very much crit probably. So yeah, maybe it'd be better if this 2-piece gave you increased crit chance on Shield Slam instead of increasing its damage. Maybe give you a little bit more synergy, because often Prot Warrior really, particularly the first season of the expansion, you might just be stacking like Verse Haste to the exclusion of crit and mastery, depending on the content you're doing, which is going to make this 4-piece have very low uptime. So some extra help in increasing its uptime would maybe be welcome. But overall, again, at least it's something. It's I've been saying that about a lot of set bonuses. I will admit these set bonuses aren't particularly exciting for me. I do understand. I think the priority here, it makes sense to do simpler ones at the start of the expansion. You also want to do more underpowered ones at the start of the expansion just because you want to be able to raise the power every season. So if you start them at a high baseline, you get to a giga absurd baseline very early into the expansion for these set bonuses, or you have to nerf a lot of set bonuses to make us actually take them off on some specs going into a new season. And that I do understand is something they don't want to do. So the baseline tuning target for these sets starting low is also, I think, a good thing. But I do still think about half of these are like, they're just so bad or boring that I would like to see iteration on them. Let me know what you think in the comments below, though. Let me know what you think of the one for your spec. Let me know if I missed any crucial interactions about your spec. Let me know if you're part of the Demonology Warlock Shadowbolt fan club. We can get some t-shirts made or something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.